Hi, Kelsey from SAPT, and we're going to talk about warm-ups today. This is a general warm-up for either a lifting session, a training session, or even before a practice that you can do so you don't, hurt yourself, but also prepares your body for a much better and a more effective training session or practice session. So for a quick review, why do we warm up? Why do we take time to actually warm up? And there's several reasons. There's four, actually. The first one is to increase your core temperature. And this is in no particular order. So to increase your core temperature will get your muscles and get your blood flowing, and so that way you're not jumping into pretty intense activity cold, and you're much less likely to either tear something or pull something. So increased body temperature is really important before jumping into vigorous activity. Secondly, if you've been sitting down for a while, say at work or at school, or let's say you've been sleeping overnight and then you're getting up to do a morning workout, your joints are going to be stiff and kind of sticky, so to speak. So doing a dynamic warm-up will help unglue those sticky joints, again, get blood flowing, kind of lube up the joints so you're not likely to pinch or pull something that way as well. It also helps prepare your body for activity. So again, if you've been sitting down for 8 hours at work or in school, and then you're going to go right into doing, say either a practice or a training session that's pretty intense activity, your body's not really ready for that yet. So warm-up gives your body a little bit longer of a runway before jumping into a more intense activity. And then lastly, it helps activate the nervous system. So if your nervous system is firing on all cylinders, you're going to have a much more efficient and more productive training session, versus if it takes a while for your brain to kind of turn on, get your nervous system moving, and therefore you're going to be slower. You're going to, everything's going to feel a lot harder to do until you're actually more warmed up from a nervous system perspective. So the warm up kind of gets a jump on that, so that your first set is, let's say your first working set is going to be much more effective than if you were to just go right into lifting. Then it's going to take you several sets to really get your, hit your stride. And then by that point, your workout's, halfway over. So it gets you, just your whole body prepared, from your nervous system to your muscles to your tendons. Everything is ready and ready to do a pretty intense workout. So if you do a warm-up first. So from a general perspective, if you're just going to do a generalized warm-up, which everyone should do anyway, not just like go into the gym, move your arms around, pull your quad back. We're talking about an actual warm-up, and there's going to be videos in this blog post below that will give you some ideas of what I'm talking about. But for as a coach, when I write warm-ups for our athletes who come in here, I try to think of a couple different movements, and then I pick exercises or drills that fall under those movement categories. So for example, I start with glute activation, core activation, hip mobility, and T-spine mobility. Those are the four main things I try to make sure everyone has in every warm-up. Again, core activation, glute activation, hip mobility, and T-spine mobility. And why those four things? If I do nothing else, I try to get those four things in. Why? One, our core needs to be turned on, and this is, again, from a nervous system perspective, but also just getting those small muscles firing and getting them on, getting you ready to go, because your core muscles are what's going to protect your spine. So you really want to have kind of a bulletproof core before going into any sort of intense activity, because that's, what is one of the top 5 things that people injure? Their lower back. So getting your core on before you actually start training is, you're more likely to protect your back as opposed to hurt your back in your workout. So that's a main reason why I pick core activation. A second thing I pick is glute activation. Again, a lot of us sit most of the time of our day, so our glutes kind of turn off and get a little bit lazy. So getting couple drills really to get your butt on, to get your glutes firing, again, that's going to protect your back in the long run, but also it's going to make your workout more effective, because you can actually deadlift and squat and do things well, and not fall into compensation patterns like falling into your lower back or using your hamstrings too much. So if your glutes are sleeping, which usually happens if you've been sitting around for a while, getting some glute activation drills in there is going to be super important to preparing them to move and to actually fire. I also mentioned hip mobility and T-spine mobility. I do those two things when I talked about warm-ups should help unglue sticky joints. So hips and T-spine, meaning your spine from here to about here. So because we sit like this all day long, and we sit with our hips, sitting in a seated position. So those two areas tend to get pretty stuck in those positions because we spend 8 hours in the same position. So doing drills that help mobilize those two areas are going to do wonders for just overall injury prevention, but also just movement in general. You're going to feel a lot better if you're unlocked in your T-spine, if you're unlocked in your joint, in your hips. Both of those places, when they're locked, they result in injuries down the road. So like if your T-spine's locked up, you can result in either shoulder injuries or maybe even neck injuries. If your hips are locked up, it can, hamstring pulls, low back issues, all kinds of stuff. So really, if these two areas are locked up, you're more likely to have injuries in the surrounding joints because those joints are now taking more of the movement that should be occurring in the T-spine or in the hip. There's more on that if you just, Google why should I have hip mobility, you'll have plenty of articles come up with that. So those 4 things, core activation, glute activation, T-spine mobility, and hip mobility, those are the 4 things that I make sure are in every workout, or every warm-up, and then from there, so that's, say if you pick 1 or 2 drills under each of those categories, that's like, 4 to 8 drills that you have going on there. So that might be all you need to get going and get moving. When I have people when I write warm-ups for people, I'll also include either specific areas that they need work on, like if someone has a really tight or really nasty ankle, I'll do hip ankle mobility as well in their warm-up time to help, again, just prepare their body to move. So if you have an area that is kind of gunky or is a problem, you can put in 1 or 2 specific drills for that particular area to work on. Like I myself have an issue with my upper back activation is really poor, so the small muscles around my scapula don't work very well, so I do several activation drills around there before I go into lifting to make sure that they're on and primed and ready to go, and it's more likely that they'll be firing when I'm actually working out as opposed to if I just jump into it cold. And then finally, the last thing I put in is general movement. So this is things like skips or side shuffles or jump variations, something that, again, that's more dynamic and getting them to move a little bit more, and it's going to help increase that core temperature and also just get their nervous system firing. A really great flow of how to do this is to start on the ground and work your way to standing. So for example, you would do a glute bridge on the ground, then maybe move to a quadruped position, so you're doing like you're on all fours and doing a drill that way for your hips, like maybe a bulldog hip mobility, and there'll be a video for that down below. But so you'll start laying on your back on all fours, and then we go progressing to standing and then eventually to moving. So you want to go from the ground and work your way to standing or / locomotion. So either that's skipping or doing some sort of low-level running drill or hopping drill or something like that. So again, the 4 main areas you want to make sure you get core activation, glute activation, T-spine mobility, and hip mobility, and then you can throw in a couple of drills maybe for specific areas that you have either weakness or stiffness in, and then some generalized movement just to get your blood flowing as well. So it really should boil down to anywhere from between 6 to 10 movements depending on how much time you actually have for your warm-up. The warm-ups here I tried to make about 6 to 10 minutes long, not any longer than that, not any shorter than that, because you really need about 6 minutes or so to get your blood flowing and get you moving. So if you choose anywhere between 6 to 10 movements, and really to take your time and make sure you're warm by the time you're done, it should take about anywhere between 5 to 10 minutes to do those warm-ups. And I guarantee that if you add this into your actual training program, you do a warm-up before you actually get it under the bar, you're going to feel a lot better. You're going to feel much more prepared to do your workout, and you'll have a much more efficient workout, to be honest. And so subsequent videos from this will be talking about specific warm-ups for the barbell lifts, and then also like how do you actually warm up when you're under the bar. But for now, that's a pretty generalized view of how do you write a general warm-up.